All right, so today we're going to do a deep dive on some pretty major shifts happening in finance and sports. We've got kind of a mix of sources here, but it seems like a lot of them are really pointing to some interesting trends.
Yeah, so we'll be covering some analysis of Bitcoin and altcoins, a pretty surprising move by Goldman Sachs, a bold prediction from Michael Saylor, and we'll top it all off with Duke's big win and the rise of flag football. So, yeah, are you ready to jump in?
Absolutely. Sounds like we got a lot to unpack, and it all seems connected in a way that really speaks to where things are headed.
Yeah, okay, so let's start with the crypto world. One of our sources is highlighting this interesting trend of Bitcoin ETF inflows slowing down. That's kind of surprising given how strong the start of the year has been. Bitcoin is supposed to be like the OG crypto, the gold standard. What's your take on this?
Well, it might seem counterintuitive, but this actually coincides with a surge in interest in altcoins. It seems like investors are kind of looking beyond Bitcoin and diversifying their portfolios. They're realizing that there's a whole universe of digital assets out there. So it's less about Bitcoin losing its shine and more about the market expanding, becoming more multifaceted.
Exactly. Yeah, you look at Ethereum, for example, it's powering so much of the DeFi revolution with its smart contract capabilities. And then there are platforms like Solana focusing on speed and scalability. Investors are recognizing that different altcoins have different strengths and use cases.
Yeah, it's like the early days of the internet, when everyone just thought it was about email, and then suddenly you had this explosion of websites and applications.
That's a great analogy.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're seeing a similar evolution in the crypto space. And, if we kind of connect this to the bigger picture, it really points towards wider adoption of crypto overall. More investment products focused on altcoins means greater mainstream exposure for the entire space. This isn't just about speculation anymore. These altcoins are powering real-world applications from decentralized finance to NFTs and the metaverse. Some are even being used to create entirely new economies within online games.
Wow, that's crazy. Okay, so we've got this shift towards altcoins and DeFi, which is already shaking things up. And then we have Goldman Sachs, this titan of traditional finance, finally acknowledging cryptocurrency in their shareholder letter. It might seem kind of surprising that a giant like Goldman Sachs is only now acknowledging crypto given how long it's been around. What's behind this sudden shift?
Well, it's a huge deal. It shows that even the most established institutions are recognizing the impact of this emerging market. For them to even mention cryptocurrency is a major step, and it could really be a catalyst for increased institutional adoption.
So this isn't just about them recognizing crypto's existence. It's about them taking it seriously, potentially even incorporating it into their operations.
Exactly. And with increased institutional investment come greater liquidity, stability, and legitimacy for the crypto market as a whole. Yeah, it's not just about speculation. It's about integrating this technology into the existing financial infrastructure. We can see the development of more sophisticated investment products, custodial services tailored for institutional needs, and even the integration of blockchain technology into traditional systems for things like settlement and clearing.
So Goldman Sachs dipping their toes into the crypto pool could have a ripple effect, potentially pushing other institutions to follow suit. It's like they're acknowledging that crypto is not going away and they need to be a part of it.
Exactly. This is just the beginning.
Wow, okay. Now let's talk about Michael Saylor, the Bitcoin evangelist himself, who recently made a bold prediction that Bitcoin's market cap will reach a mind-blowing $20 trillion in the next 4 to 8 years. That's more than the entire market cap of gold. Is he being realistic, or is this just Saylor being Saylor?
Well, he's certainly known for his strong convictions and for being incredibly bullish on Bitcoin.
Yeah, that's one way to put it. So what's his reasoning here?
So Saylor's argument is that Bitcoin is quote-unquote digital capital, and that its adoption is accelerating faster than any other asset in history. He believes that Bitcoin's fixed supply, decentralized nature, and security features make it the ultimate store of value in the digital age.
Wow, that's a huge prediction. Are there any factors that could prevent Bitcoin from reaching that level? What are the potential roadblocks?
Well, it's not without its challenges for sure. Regulatory uncertainty is a big one. Governments are still grappling with how to regulate crypto, and this lack of clarity could deter institutional investors. Then there's the issue of scalability. The Bitcoin network can only process a limited number of transactions per second, which could hinder its growth if solutions aren't implemented.
So even with all of Bitcoin's potential, there are some hurdles to overcome. But let's say, for argument's sake, that Saylor's prediction comes true. What would a $20 trillion Bitcoin market cap mean for the global financial system?
Well, if Saylor's right, Bitcoin could become a dominant force in global finance, potentially surpassing gold and rivaling the largest financial markets. It would represent a fundamental shift in how we think about money and value.
We're talking about a seismic shift, a complete reimagining of the financial landscape as we know it. This is fascinating stuff.
Absolutely. And it highlights just how much potential there is for disruption and innovation in the world of finance.
Okay, we've covered a lot of ground in the world of crypto, and it's clear that things are moving fast. Now let's shift gears and dive into the exciting world of sports, starting with
College basketball, where Duke just clinched the ACC Championship, further cementing their position as a top contender for the NCAA tournament.
Yeah, it seems like they're firing on all cylinders right now, but March Madness is a whole different beast. What are your thoughts on their chances considering how notoriously unpredictable the tournament can be?
Well, their victory definitely reinforces their position as one of the top teams in college basketball. They have a talented and experienced roster, and their coach is a legend. But you're right, March Madness is a different animal altogether. It's all about momentum matchups and sometimes just plain luck.
So even with all their strengths, Duke can't afford to get complacent.
Exactly. Any team, regardless of seeding, can have a bad night or run into a hot opponent. Duke needs to stay focused, manage their players' health and stamina effectively, and maintain that mental edge throughout the tournament. It's a marathon, not a sprint, and the pressure of being a top seed can be intense.
Right, they'll have a target on their backs. But hey, that's what makes March Madness so compelling, right? Those underdog stories, the unexpected, upsets the Cinderella runs. Speaking of shaking things up, let's get back to that bold prediction from Michael Saylor. A $20 trillion market cap for Bitcoin in just a few years seems almost unimaginable. What are the key factors that could actually drive that kind of growth?
Well, Saylor's not just pulling this out of thin air. He's basing it on a few key assumptions. First, he believes Bitcoin adoption will continue to accelerate, with more businesses accepting it as payment and more individuals investing in it. We're already seeing signs of this with companies like Tesla and Square adding Bitcoin to their balance sheets.
So it's becoming more mainstream, less of a niche asset?
Exactly. And as adoption increases, so does demand, which, coupled with Bitcoin's fixed supply, naturally drives the price upwards. Saylor also believes institutional investment will play a huge role. If major institutions like pension funds and hedge funds start allocating significant capital to Bitcoin, it could create a massive influx of demand.
It's like a self-fulfilling prophecy. The more people believe in it, the more valuable it becomes.
That's the core of Saylor's argument. He sees Bitcoin as more than just a digital asset. He sees it as a paradigm shift in how we think about money and value. He argues that Bitcoin is a superior store of value compared to traditional assets like gold, especially in an increasingly digital world.
Okay, so Saylor's betting on this combination of mainstream adoption, institutional buy-in, and Bitcoin's inherent advantages as a store of value. But let's go back to the potential roadblocks for a minute. You mentioned regulatory uncertainty as a major challenge. Can you expand on that?
Sure. Right now, the regulatory landscape for crypto is still evolving and varies widely across jurisdictions. This lack of clarity can be a deterrent for large institutions that are accustomed to clear rules and oversight. Governments are trying to figure out how to balance fostering innovation with protecting investors and preventing illicit activities. It's a delicate dance.
So until there's a more unified and clear regulatory framework, institutional investors might hesitate to jump in with both feet.
Exactly. And that's just one piece of the puzzle. There's also the issue of scalability. The Bitcoin network can only process a limited number of transactions per second, which could become a bottleneck as adoption grows.
Right. If it's going to be a truly global currency, it needs to be able to handle the volume. So even if Saylor's vision seems far-fetched to some, the fact that these conversations are happening, that major institutions are taking notice, and that adoption is increasing all point to a future where crypto plays a much bigger role in our lives.
Absolutely. The genie is out of the bottle.
Yeah.
Now let's shift gears back to traditional finance for a moment. We were discussing Goldman Sachs' acknowledgement of cryptocurrency earlier. It seems like they're finally coming around, but what do you think took them so long?
Yeah, I mean, they're known for being at the forefront of financial innovation. It seems like they've been pretty quiet on the crypto front until now.
Well, remember, Goldman Sachs is a titan of traditional finance. They have a reputation to uphold, and they need to be extremely careful about any moves that could be perceived as risky or speculative.
So they're taking a more measured approach, waiting for the right moment to enter the game.
Precisely. And it seems like they've finally reached that point. Their acknowledgement of cryptocurrency isn't just symbolic, it's likely driven by a strategic assessment of where the market is headed.
So is this the start of a new chapter for Goldman Sachs where they become a major player in the crypto space?
It's certainly possible. They have the resources, the expertise, and the connections to make a significant impact. And their move could have a ripple effect, encouraging other traditional institutions to follow suit.
So it's not just about Goldman Sachs, it's about what their actions signal to the rest of the financial world. It's like a validation of crypto's legitimacy, a sign that it's finally entering the big leagues.
Exactly. Now let's move on to something completely different.
The world of sports, just like the world of finance, is seeing disruption with crypto. The sports world is also evolving, and flag football's Olympic debut is a prime example. What do you think is driving this surge in popularity for flag football? I mean, it's been around forever, but now it's hitting the world stage.
Well, it offers a really unique combination of athleticism, strategy, and accessibility. It's a fast-paced, dynamic sport that requires skill, agility, and teamwork. But unlike traditional tackle football, it's a much safer alternative, reducing the risk of concussions and other injuries.
Right. So you get the excitement and strategic elements of football without some of the inherent risks that makes it appealing to a wider range of people, not just those seeking, high-impact, full-contact sport.
Exactly. Yeah, it opens up the sport to people of all ages, body types, and athletic backgrounds. And the fact that collegiate players will be competing on the Chicago Bears home field for the 2028 Olympics is a huge statement. It not only highlights the growing popularity of flag football, but also underscores its potential as a pathway for athletes who might not have traditional football opportunities.
It's leveling the playing field in a way, and I think it speaks to a broader trend of inclusivity in sports. Flag football is inherently more inclusive because it doesn't require the same level of physicality as tackle football. So you have men and women competing together, people of different sizes and strengths, finding their niche. That's pretty cool to see.
Absolutely. And I think that's a big part of its appeal. It's a sport that embraces diversity and allows people to compete on a more even playing field.
So the Olympics are obviously a huge platform for any sport. What kind of impact do you think this global exposure will have on the future of flag football?
The Olympics will undoubtedly be a game changer. It'll expose the sport to a massive global audience, attracting new fans, players, and investors. With increased exposure comes greater legitimacy, which could lead to expanded leagues, professional opportunities, and even more investment in the sport at all levels.
So it's like a domino effect. The Olympics raise the profile of the sport, which attracts more interest, which leads to more investment and infrastructure, and suddenly you have a truly global sport with a vibrant professional scene.
Exactly, and think about the cultural impact as well. Football, in its traditional form, is a predominantly American sport, but flag football, with its emphasis on skill strategy and teamwork, has the potential to transcend cultural boundaries and become a truly global phenomenon.
Yeah, I can already picture kids in all corners of the world playing flag football in parks and schoolyards, dreaming of Olympic glory. It's exciting to think about. Okay, so we've explored these major shifts happening in finance and sports, from the evolving landscape of crypto to the rising stars in college basketball and the exciting future of flag football. It's a lot to process.
It is, but that's what makes these deep dives so fascinating. We get to explore these interconnected trends, consider their implications, and ask ourselves, what does this all mean? What's next?
Right. It's not just about understanding what's happening right now. It's about looking ahead and trying to anticipate what's coming next. So as we wrap up this deep dive, what are some key takeaways you'd like our listeners to remember?
I think the biggest takeaway is that the world is changing at an incredible pace, and we're seeing that reflected in both finance and sports, whether it's the rise of cryptocurrency, the evolution of traditional institutions like Goldman Sachs, the growing popularity of flag football, or the intense competition in college basketball. These are all signs of a world in constant flux.
And it's not just about keeping up with the changes, it's about embracing them, understanding the forces at play, and recognizing the opportunities that these shifts create.
Exactly. So to our listeners, I encourage you to keep exploring, keep learning, and keep asking questions. The future is full of possibilities, and it's up to each of us to shape it with our curiosity, critical thinking, and a willingness to embrace change.
That's a great note to end on. Thanks for joining us for another deep dive. Until next time, keep diving deep.